I'm curious. Is there anything in your past? I mean, you have quite a decorated CV that has shaped where you are right now.
I like to say that, like, I'm in construction like everybody else, completely involuntarily. I've hardly ever met somebody who's like voluntarily in construction.
So when did you jump into trunk tools? Like, what was your role perhaps before that? Because I'm guessing that inspired the jump or move.
Yeah,
Or
I had like smaller startups before. I like to say I had my first startup when I was years old, and I stole my parents' Polaroid camera and went to the local fair and sold people on Polaroids. And so I've always been very like, just make your own money in a way.
Sentiment analysis in construction. Can you tell what is that about?
Yes, for all the nerds out there. When you sentiment analysis is a subcategory and subcategory. And what sentiment analysis does in very easy terms, it measures how somebody feels when they speak or write. And so you can measure how construction people feel when they write emails or messages. And when you
all know how they feel.
Sad. Hey everyone, and welcome to the Bricks and Bytes podcast, where we dive into construction and AEC technology. Before we get started though, if you're a startup founder or operator responsible for innovation in your company, or you want a deeper, more insightful look into technology in AEC, you won't want to miss our newsletter. From deep dives into particular technologies such as AI, robotics, design, software, and so on. Hot takes from investors betting big in AEC technology and advice on building tech companies, including the stories and takeaways of the most successful AEC technology founders. Head over to www.bricks-bytes.com and sign up today to get this exclusive material straight to your inbox. And now for the episode.
This episode is brought to you by Build Vision, transforming construction supply chain by bringing contractors, manufacturers, and stakeholders onto a single software platform. Visit buildvision.io to find out more.
Hey everyone, this episode forms part of a series where we dive into the world of AI and documentation management. If you want to go even deeper, head over to bricks-bytes.com/downloads to download our extensive report. In the report, we cover a comprehensive analysis of the AI construction technology landscape, including detailed profiles of 5 leading companies. We break down their business models, growth, and unique technological approaches, essential intelligence for understanding where the market is headed and identifying potential investment opportunities. We explore an actionable framework for evaluating AI solutions, specifically distinguishing between true innovators and wrappers. This helps you assess which companies are developing defensible technology versus those simply repackaging existing solutions, crucial insight for making informed investment or partnership decisions. We also look at real implementation case studies and ROI metrics from enterprise customers, including how companies like Gilbane are saving substantial sums per month in rework costs, and how others are achieving 80 to 90% time savings in contract review processes. These concrete examples help validate market potential and scalability. The report is particularly valuable for corporate venture teams, innovation teams, and construction project teams looking to understand where the real opportunities lie in construction AI. If you want to download the report, head over to www.bricks-bytes.com/downloads. But now for the episode. Okay, Sarah, so thanks for joining us. Today we have Sarah from Trunk Tools. And Sarah, you have a kind of, in fact, I just noticed it's Dr. Sarah. Should I call you Dr. Sarah or just Sarah?
For you, it's just Sarah.
Thanks,
I
Sarah.
feel honored. Okay, so you have an interesting background. From the age of 12, you were a carpenter, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I still got this. Yeah.
Still got the muscles. Cool. And then you also worked your way up to project manager. Then you done some software development by the looks of things. And in November 21, founded Trunk Tools.
Right after funding ran out in the world. It was a great time.
Sounds good. Well, you're still here, so it looks like it's all okay. Yeah, I'm curious. Is there anything in your past? I mean, you have quite a decorated CV that has shaped where you are right now.
I mean, there's a few things. I like to say that, like, I'm in construction like everybody else, completely involuntarily. I've hardly ever met somebody who's like voluntarily in construction. Like, I don't know about you, but it's such an interesting black and white industry, right? It's also, yeah, it's very black and white. You're either in construction or you do not care about it. There's very few people that are like, I'm kind of into construction. Like, it's just not a thing. You know that everybody's kind of into healthcare, but nobody's kind of into construction. So anyways, I'm very much in construction. But yeah, I grew up in a poor environment, and my dad was a carpenter, and he brought the kids to work. And so that's how it started. And then I really liked making money. And there was so much more money to make in the trades than in any kind of knowledge work job back in the days, which partially still holds true today. And so I also really liked working for something real, like creating something that is here to stay, and not just, I don't know, creating a PowerPoint slide that then gets thrown out and never looked again after 10 hours of work. And so that was kind of cool. But I think what shaped, I don't know, like lots of things. I think growing up without a lot of, like, you know, means definitely shapes you. It creates this insane chip on my shoulder, and this insane drive that has always pushed me to go further. And I think my parents have taught me two things. That was like, what gets you out of where we were at is like hard work and education. And that was a very European mindset, right? It's like this education mindset. It doesn't necessarily hold true in the US, but in Europe, I feel that's just something that is very prevalent. And
you say education?
So I did a lot of, education. Yeah.
What, mine? What the hell happened to you then?
Why?
Is your education of European mindset? You're not educated.
No, but that's what I mean. I think, that's what I'm saying. I think in Europe, more people go for education and think it's needed and necessary for the job. Whereas in the US, there's a lot of these, like, dropping out of Stanford is a great idea. Yeah. Like in Europe, like that's just very looked down upon. And I can't tell you what's right or wrong, but I grew up in Europe, so I have all the degrees, as you pointed out initially. But I did all of them next to working full time because I needed to finance my life. And so I think that really shaped me, that like actually bringing the education back into reality and bringing reality back into education was always like a winning factor for me. And then I think the job that shaped me the most ever was working as a waitress on Munich Oktoberfest. That was the hardest job I've ever done. No trades job compares to being a waitress at Oktoberfest and carrying around 14 steins of beer.
How many?
Yes.
How many could you carry 14. At once? What's your record? Wow.
14. So that's like 7 kilos? 7 kilos of beer plus the glass?
That is 32 kilos of beer plus glass, and 72 pounds of stuff in your hands. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, like the beer is about 1 kilo, and then the glass is 1.3 kilos. So it's like 2.3 kilos a glass, and then you multiply it by 14.
So don't tell us that this.
I was going to say.
Well, don't tell us that this biceps is from carpenting, doing the carpentry. It's from the carrying beer, I think.
It is, yeah, but it just like paid really well, right? It paid pretty much financed my whole year of undergrad with like a 2-week work shift at Oktoberfest. But it was like 16 hours a day, 16 days in a row. You couldn't sleep, you couldn't eat, right? You would just like be on. But I think what it taught me is like you were completely, you were working for your own P&L, which was my first time in my life that I was completely responsible for my own P&L. Before that, I was paid per hour. In Oktoberfest, you just get paid per commission, like a piece of revenue, plus tip, obviously. And so that shifted my mindset of like, hey, if I, get more education, get paid more per hour, to like, wait, if I'm like actually like doing my own thing, I'm way more independent. I have way more control over my ultimate outcome. And I think that really started shifted my thinking of corporate career to like entrepreneurship.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. When did you jump into trunk tools? Like what was your role perhaps before that? Because I'm guessing that inspired the jump or move.
Yeah, I had like smaller startups before. I like to say I had my first startup when I was 5 years old, and I stole my parents' Polaroid camera and went to the local fair and sold people on Polaroids. And so I've always been very like just make your own money in a way. Yeah. And now they say it's entrepreneurial. I think back in the days it was just like poor and street smart. There was for sure dodginess in everything I did. I mean, I stole a camera and sold it, right? Good. Like that's just, yeah.
Hustling.
By now it's hustling. Yeah. By now it's way more legal and way more professional. But yeah, I had a software startup in Europe on the side, and I learned kind of like the ins and outs, but I didn't like the European startup environment, at least not 10 years ago. It was in certain countries you weren't allowed to give people equity. Like there's just so much wrong with this. If you wanted to like fire somebody, you had to keep them for 2-3 months. Like it's just like, I don't know if it's still like that, but I was like, I can't deal with this. Yeah. And so I really wanted to start a company in the US. And in order for me to get here, I needed a visa, I needed a network. And so I applied for business schools. And I was lucky enough to get into Stanford, of all schools, right in the middle of Silicon Valley. And that was just a perfect start. So I showed up at Stanford and almost got kicked out in my first week because I've never heard about an attendance policy at a school. Like when you do school in Europe, you just show up for exams. That's how I did all my degrees. I think for my PhD, I was in the classroom maybe like 4 hours in my whole PhD program. The rest was literally just me showing up for exams and writing a thesis. I show up at Stanford, and my first week I'm like incorporating a company and like, starting to hire people, like do all the things I actually came here to do. And Stanford calls me and is like, where are you? And it's like, I'm building a company. And they're like, yeah, how about like showing up in the classroom? We have an attendance policy, or we're going to kick you out. Right? And so it's like,
and that was Trunk Tools at the time, or there was something else?
No, that was a pre-company before Trunk Tools. Very similar, actually. It's interesting. We did natural language processing and sentiment analysis in construction, which was part of my PhD. And
sentiment analysis in construction. Can you tell what is that about?
Yes, for all the nerds out there. When you sentiment analysis is a subcategory of natural language processing and subcategory of artificial intelligence. And what sentiment analysis does in very easy terms, it measures how somebody feels when they speak or write. And so you can measure how construction people feel when they write emails or messages. And when you
we all know how they do.
Yeah, we know the baseline is already like pretty bad, right? But when you measure this over an extended period of time on a construction site, you can see changes in sentiment. And so part of my PhD was actually showing that the sentiment drops, so the emotion drop about 3 months before the financials drop. And it was like highly interesting, right? Which makes total sense if you've been on a job site, right? People on the ground know that shit is hitting the fan, right? And so like, it's really about like hiding it or communicating it or not. So we tried to get that off the ground in the US because Europe with GDPR and so on would just not fly. And in the US, people were not really willing to give us the data that we needed to train these models. So we struggled for like a year trying to get data and trying to get everything off the ground. Funding was there. That was not the problem, but really just like I wanted to prove it out that I can get enough data for these models.
And which year was it? Sorry?
I'm thinking right now. This is 2019, right? So we're talking 5 years ago. And the market and the industry was not at a point intellectually where they were like, AI is a thing and so on. Now, fast forward a few years, we're like the leading generative AI company in construction, and we are sitting on a lot of data. And yes, it's de-identified and it's aggregated and everything like that, but the industry is way more open right now for AI in general, and also more open that like, training on aggregated de-identified data is part of what we need to do to make the industry better. And it's beautiful to see. We are just now working on an agent again that measures sentiment. So it's funny that we are now going back in time pretty much in research that I've done like 6-7 years ago. And now we're finally at a time where the market can do it.
Yeah. Okay. Seems like a nice way to segue into Trunk Tools. So could you tell us about, how that all came about and what you guys are doing?
Yeah. And I also want to hear the story of the first race in the down market. How did it feel like?
We love a good down market. I feel, okay, Trunk Tools first. We, in easy terms, we said we built the brain behind construction. And what we mean with that is construction has a huge problem with unstructured data, right? So the reason why there is, if you look at research and data analysis in construction and so on, like, a lot of it is just you can't do anything with the existing data. In my PhD, like I had Strabag, a big European company, pay for it, And they even supported me to a point where they paid for data cleaning, right? So that I could actually do some data analysis, which is crazy. Like it's such a bubble, right? Like in the research world, you can do this. In reality, this is just like unfeasible. And we have a massive amounts of data, but they're super unstructured. So nobody knows what to do with it, right? And so what we built is like an artificial brain that goes into this mess of unstructured data and turns it into structured data sets by itself. And then on top of that, what we call the brain that is trained for each and every construction site. On top of this brain, we are deploying an army of AI-based agents. An AI agent is like an AI assistant that takes over full workflow, that can create RFIs, that can compare submittals with specifications, that can show you discrepancies in your blueprints versus in your specs, that can answer any question around your construction site. That's really how we started, right? Where people were like, here's a question for you. When we think about a $500 million high-rise, pretty average in like, at least in New York, so 30-floor high-rise, $500 million, do you want to take a guess of how many pages of documents they have on their project management system? How many pages? Specs, submittals, RFIs, blueprints, you name it.
For the construction stage? Or
yeah, to build a $500 million high-rise.
It must be at least 5 million pages.
Yeah. I was going to say like 50,000.
Yeah, okay. So most people guess around the 10 to 50,000. Martin, you're like the one person ever, and I've done this with like 500 people at this point, that has ever guessed more. Very impressive. So we got a total of 3.6 million pages. So you were very, very close.
Hey, Martin, I told you you were uneducated at the start of this. Now now I look stupid.
I actually finished more schools than you, my man. Anyway.
Wow. Euro bashing right there. I love it. Yeah, so we started with, when we started with our first larger customer, again, on a $500 million job, we received 3.6 million pages of documentation. This was halfway through the job, right? So with a whole job, probably closer to Martin's guess of 5 million pages. It is humanly impossible to read 5 million pages, right? Like it just makes no sense. By the way, 5 million pages is 3 times as high as the building they're building. So that's kind of like the stack of paper. And so that's the insanity we deal with in construction. And what we started with is just taking all this data, throwing it through vision and language model, right? It's obviously a multiple approach, structuring the data, and then having people just ask questions about it. So kind of like Copilot, ChatGPT for construction, whatever you want to call it. That's really how we started. And this is going through the roof. People were like, oh my God, I don't have to try to keyword search something anymore. I can semantically search. And because of that structured database, when they ask about if the door has power actuated hardware, we're not just pulling from the finishing schedules for doors, but we're also pulling from the electrical drawings. And it turns out that these two documents never match, like in no construction set ever, right? Because the person doing the electrical drawings is not the person doing the finishing schedule. And so that is a prevalent problem in construction. It costs us 6.5% of every job. 6.5% of construction worldwide is because of the data discrepancies that we have in our millions of pages of documents. And that's really how we started. And that took off. And then we were like, wait, we are already sitting in so much structured data. We have, huge AI teams. Why are we not like automating real workflows? And that's really where we're at now. We just launched, we are launching it in 2 weeks, I think, publicly, but until this comes out, it's launched. We are launching a schedule agent, the first ever schedule agent that sits by itself on top of the schedule and is alerting people that something is not going to work, right? So it is like screening for, there's a task coming up next week. It's pouring concrete. It's actually screening if the concrete order form is done. It's screening if all the RFIs are closed. And so if you do this often enough by itself, it will find mistakes and goes back alerting the user, be like, you will never be pouring concrete next week, my friend, right? And so like here, actually click here to fill out the order form. And then the agent goes, fill out the order form. It's really augmenting the human so that the people, we want to let builders build. Like nobody signed up for this job to be a victim of bureaucracy. And so our whole mission as a company is we're empowering builders and we're empowering construction and we let builders build. Like that's really what we did.
Okay, I've got some follow-ups on this. So the problem is unstructured data, right? So
yes,
what you are creating structured data sets. Are they? Do you specialize, or is it reasonable to specialize within the verticals of, let's say, design information of architectural information, structural information, or more like construction stage information, or you've got all of this data and it doesn't matter that they need to be grouped in a particular verticals, or is there a need for verticals? Maybe why not? Or if yes, why yes? If you can say something on that.
Yeah, there's no need right now for us anymore to be in a vertical. We started with like document types initially, right? We were like, okay, let's start with everything that's text because LLMs were way better than vision models, right? And so on. And like by now, we launched 4 months ago, I think we launched that we are now doing blueprints. We're the only ones in the world that can actively like digest and query and all of this stuff like of blueprints successfully. And so that was a bigger engineering lift, right? It took us a year or something like that to like fine tune the models and all of this. But right now we're only doing construction because we do not care about anybody else. And so we're sticking very much to the industry, but within the industry, we have highways, we have tunnels, we have high rises. Like from a vertical perspective, it doesn't matter. We're definitely focused on the execution piece. So channel contractors, subcontractors, we've started now with a few owners, operators, and insurance companies. But by heart, we are construction people, and like we want to kind of like stick to that. We're not going we worked with a few architects, but we're not the design automation piece we let this to part of startups. We are automating and augmenting the actual construction execution.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
At what stage does Trunk Tools come in? Is it pre-construction or during?
It's the beauty of it, any stage, because they all have the same problem. They have data in a ton of silos, it's completely unstructured, and so we can really come in at any stage, and we've done it at any stage, right? We work with an owner operator that we are way pre-construction, the design phase. This project is like 3 years out, right? And then recently we got pushed on a $1 billion job in the closeout period, right? Where it's messy and where you have 50 trades and like 800 people in a job, right? And so like, you can really like do whatever. We built it that way because I think what kills a lot of construction tech startups is that they have to be put in place before the project starts. And that makes your sales cycles forever. And it's just it's a huge problem with delayed revenue. And so we were always like, whatever we do, it needs to be able to be deployed tomorrow at any job.
Mm-hmm. So from customers' point of view, how much work do they need to do to get you the data that Trunk Tool needs to give them the outcome, and what is the outcome?
Yeah, it sounds like complete sales BS, but it's about 5 minutes on their side. They need to connect our API connector to their project management system, their Procore, Think project, whatever it is. And that usually takes them a few minutes. Some admin needs to log in. And then we start the data sync from all their systems, ERP, PMS, whatever it is, right? The data sync on our side takes a couple of days, not more. It depends a little bit on size. We've done it in 2 hours, and the max was like 3 days on a $4 billion job. But we do the data syncing and the pre-processing and everything. And that just is really the time when we turn unstructured data into structured data. And then they can start using it. And usually we start with like the co-pilot aspect of them, interacting with the data, asking questions. And then a few weeks later, we like start deploying the next agent and the next agent. And
so the outcome is what is then the kind of like a platform that they can ask questions to it, and they give them answers, or was the like maybe use case or case study, if you can give an example.
Yeah, that's always the first that we start with, right? It's like the ChatGPT for construction. Instead of doing like a keyword search somewhere else, you just ask us semantically whatever problems or questions you have. You're in a discussion with your subcontractor who is arguing the silicon is not part of their contract, right? And instead of trying to find the contract and see through, you just text us. And we can do text or web app, right? And you can just text us, and within a few seconds, we're like, yeah, it is part of your contract, dear painter, subcontractor, whatever it is, go back to work. And so that's usually how we start. And then over time, we're pushing out more of the automation of like, hey, you are going to be behind schedule next week. And so then it goes from pulling information to pushing information to them.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have a productivity agent that when we see they're behind schedule, we're like, hey, if you pay your Carpenter's $20 more today, they will actually get back on the critical path. Like, do you want to do that? And then they say yes. And then you see where this is going, right? We're like automating and augmenting them as much of the actual like GC work, and even like whatever, all the white collar work in construction is what we are really trying to augment here.
How do people like, what's the sort of, how is it currently managed with people? And then I guess like how much, like, what effort are you guys saving a typical user?
What's the
ROI?
It's about
That's 1 to 2 hours. The ROI comes from two places. It's like time saved, and then it's rework saved, right? The time saved is about 1 to 2 hours a day per user, which is already huge. And then there's the rework piece on top, right? Which again, up to 65% of rework is because of data discrepancies. I'm not promising you like I can get rid of 65% of rework today, but probably a year from now, right? By full use, that's very much to go, because we can show data discrepancies better than anybody else, and we can show them early. And so the current ROI reported back from our customers is 40x, which probably just means we're too cheap, but that's okay because we're gaining market shares. And so there's really no doubts around that. People like it because, again, I hate when like people are like, oh, construction people don't like to adopt technology. That's actually not true. Most technology in construction is just really, really bad. Like the UI is from the 90s. The software doesn't work. You wait like 10 seconds for something to load. Like, the problem is not that people are against technology. The problem is that technology is terrible in construction and it's not user friendly. And we are very field first. And so everything that you'll ever see from our company is also via text message, right? Because we don't need people to train on like a new UI. I don't know if most of these project management platforms are really hard to work with. There's a million buttons and you need like 2 weeks of training to figure out to even use 10% of what they have built, right? And so we are toning it down to the essence, and the essence of any kind of software is what's the job to be done. And the job to be done for like the ChatGPT piece of ours is like, I have a question, I need an answer. I do not really care where the answer comes from. I just want to get back to doing my job. And so that's why we do this as text messages. For example, you get a phone number, you text us like, what's the color in the lobby? And within 5 seconds, here's Benjamin Moore White. And you're like, great, that's actually all I needed.
Just a quick pause. If you're finding this valuable, we've got a comprehensive report that dives even deeper into AI in construction documentation management. From market analysis of leading startups to real ROI metrics from enterprise implementations is your guide to understanding the AI construction documentation management landscape. Download it at www.bricks-bytes.com/downloads. Now back to the show.
Yeah, so the user is mostly like the operative on site who has like got general questions about what's going on.
That's how we started. Yeah, that's how we started. We started in the field because we love the field, and so superintendents, PM, PXs, PEs. Now it is being used in way different worlds as well. We are in claims departments, in insurance departments, in pre-construction architecture. Yeah.
I just want to ask,
right? If you think it, yeah. No,
sorry.
One thing, like we really failed with BIM a little bit as an industry, and that's also a hot take here. But I was a big opponent of BIM originally. I thought this was the solution, and intellectually makes a lot of sense. If you really understand the industry, it makes a lot of sense that it's never going to work, right? Because the people who get the advantage of a real high level of detail BIM are not the people who have to pay for it. And that's in construction why it's never going to work. And there's also a problem of like responsibility shift and risk shift, which we also don't like in our industry.
That's a very good point.
When you think about BIM, it is really, the idea behind it was whatever like an owner wants and is trying to build or pay for, this piece of information needs to get down to the person swinging the hammer. That was BIM. And what we do is exactly that, just without the pretty 3D model, right? And we actually like to say we do BIM because BIM just means building information modeling. Nowhere it's written that the model needs to be a 3D Revit model. Like our model is a data model. And so we like to say we're doing the only real BIM because our level of detail is like 1,000, right? Because we literally have every little bits and piece of data, and we give it back to the people in a semantic way instead of a visual way.
Right. So on the as you touched on BIM, so can you somehow analyze the BIM data, or do you need the output to be like DWG or PDF drawing or some other format?
We take everything. We have done Revit files, full-on BIM files. We have done scanned PDFs from the 70s. So as a 2D plan in the blueprint world, right? Like we take it all. Obviously, like I love getting high-level detailed Revit files because the data is already super structured, right? But how often do you actually get this, especially BIM in construction execution that's worth something? From our experience, that's 5% of the market. 95% of the market does not have a BIM model that works for execution. We all hear about the shiny, large mega projects. Yeah, okay, if I spend $1 billion on a job, it's easy for me to spend $10 million on a BIM model. But for the mid-market stuff, that's just not there. It's not reasonable.
So can you guys read the drawings somehow? We spoke with a few people,
Yes.
and it seems to be very challenging task to read the drawings. And if you can, like to what degree and what maybe type of drawings or what still cannot be read at this point in time?
Yeah, it is definitely tricky, and we're not fully where I want to be. We do read the drawings, again, scanned, DWG, PDF, whatever it is. We get about 70% of the data out of drawings currently. And again, if you ask me again in 6 months, it's probably 80% or 90%. We are fine tuning a lot. We've trained a lot of these, like, just vision models perfectly, tried to do this for drawings. It is really hard because there's very little consistency in construction drawings. And there's so many layers, right? The layers really mess with every kind of vision model. So I think so overall accuracy and data that we can extract 70% on drawings. Overall for everything, by the way, on text-based stuff, we had 99%. On tables and schedules, we had like 97%. The drawings is kind of what drags our accuracy and data extraction piece down a lot. But MEP drawings, for example, are way harder than architectural drawings, right? And so there's certain stuff that we're just not fully there. Counting objects, for example, sometimes works perfectly, and then other objects just don't work because our object library is not there, or because the architect decided to have a square toilet instead of like an oval toilet, right? There's just these like decisions that whoever makes drawings has made that just make no sense in reality. So getting better. Our overall accuracy is over 90% on all of our customers and use cases, which is great because our customers compare it to Microsoft SharePoint or ChatGPT or something like that, where you're at like between 40 and 60%. That's our next best competitor. So we are way higher because we built for the industry and fine-tuned and trained for the industry, but we are not perfectly where
I was going to ask you about accuracy, but you explained it very well. What is something that you are working on right now, actually, on the product side?
It's almost all agents because we've built this brain that structures the data. So that stuff is kind of, this will always get optimized, but it's pretty good. And again, to the optimization part, we're still trying to optimize the blueprint side of things, but it's good enough. We are better than humans already. Like we've been better than humans for a year at this point. What we are spending most of our time with is just like, what are the next tasks that we can automate? And we did a recent study on the construction side where we're time stopping how they spend their time on a day. And 70% of their time, by the way, they spend only 8% of their time on field issues, which is the actual job. Okay, so 92% of the time is bureaucracy, which is crazy. And so we are able, with the tech we have today, we're able to automate 70% of the time that they spend. It's not fully productized, right? So what that means is now we are just working on an RFI agent, we're working on a meeting prep agent and so on. So like we really just measured where people spending time, and now we are trying to automate these bureaucratic tasks for them so that, again, they can go back and let builders build.
I had a question on accuracy because it seems it's like a concern with people around the industry is that we come across hallucinations and that kind of thing. And obviously, okay. I don't know how to respond to that one, but yeah, I'll take it.
It's not only.
Thank you. So what was
accuracy.
I going to ask?
Hallucinations.
Accuracy, yeah. So yeah, obviously in construction there's like there's high stakes, right? So people, if the AI result that people get is inaccurate, then that could potentially result in like I don't know, coming maybe
Yes,
fatal
millions
in
of
some
dollars.
instances. Yeah.
Yeah.
So how do you guys tackle that?
Yeah. There's just want to be clear here that when I say like we can extract 99% of the data, it doesn't mean in the 1% we are hallucinating. Our overall accuracy that we promise customers is 90%. The other 10% are not wrong or hallucinated. The other 10% we tell the customer we don't know. Okay, so let's go back to the example of what's the color of the lobby, what color paint should I use in the lobby? 9 out of 10 times we tell them the exact perfect answer with everything in grid. 1 out of 10 times we tell them, hey, we don't know. We almost never hallucinate. We almost never tell them it is like black, or even so it should be white. The difference here is like, we are not just an LLM, right? We are a RAG product, retrieval augmented generation, or also RAFT, retrieval augmented fine tuning.
Wow.
I know
Learning
lots of
something.
words, but I don't know your audience,
Yeah.
right? Like, for the nerds out there, this is a RAG product. What the difference between RAG and LLMs is that we are actually doing an enterprise search first. So what that means is we have the structured database. The question is coming in as like, what color should I use in the lobby? So we do an enterprise search on all the structured data, look for lobby, look for all the colors that have to do with lobby and so on, and spit these pieces of documentation up. And then we have an answer that is a vectorized answer. And then we just use an LLM to turn this string of numbers back into something that humans can understand. The big difference here is if you ask ChatGPT for the color of the lobby, it will just make up something, right? Because it doesn't actually look at data or at underlying, it just looks at the internet, which is completely useless for construction. And so that's the first step here. The second one is we have an insane amount of internal measures built in where we get a question, we rephrase it, we throw it against 12 different searches, we get 12 different answers, and then each of these 12 answers is measured. And if the highest answer is still not 99.9% accurate, we just tell the user we don't know. And so that's really how we avoid these hallucinations. And the third thing is the temperatures of our models are 0. For anybody out there who's played around with these, there's something that you can tune how creative are the models allowed to be in their answers, and our models are just not creative. Construction is not creative. I mean, actually, it's very creative, but we are not creative. And so that's how you avoid hallucinations to the most part. It's very rare that we have wrong answers. Plus, question answer, and then we give them a source document, right? So we tell them the color of the lobby is white. Here's the RFI, the original document where we found that piece of information. They can click on it, and then it jumps on the right page and it highlights the right section, right? So there's this trust but verify point that we're very used to from Google search, for example, right? A big problem, I think, with the ChatGPT search initial was it didn't give you a link, and so it started hallucinating or like making up creative answers, and you couldn't even prove them. If you do a Google search, we're very used to like clicking on the first 2-3 links to like make sure that the answer is valid. So think about it more like a Google search for construction than the ChatGPT part, but also where we heavily pre-filter the data that we give
Very
them.
good. I wanted to touch on pricing. And so is the pricing the same for 3.6 million page skyscraper and smaller projects, or you would differentiate it somehow? And how did you come to it?
Yeah, we differentiated a little bit. Yeah, I mean, it's, pricing for a company of, we are like 4 years old, but like pricing is still something that we are playing around with. We A/B test different markets, different geographies and stuff like that. Our cost function is obviously part of data processing, right? So our biggest job was $4 billion, right? So on a $4 billion job, we obviously charge more than, I think our smallest job was a $10 million job, because a $10 million job has like, I don't know, like 50,000 pages. A $4 billion job has like 10 million pages. So that's more where, the amount of GPUs is different on a large job than on a small job. So that's why our pricing is slightly tiered, but it's not crazy different.
And
do people like, it's essentially it's price per project. So when someone inquires of you there, you will say, okay, it's this much based on,
Yeah, I mean, we do enterprise agreements, right? But this is then when once they have like 20, 30 jobs online. But up until that, it's usually per
And
job.
so
Yeah.
does the customer talk to one of your employees or members of Trunk Tools, or this they don't need to? There is no consultation type of service that you provide.
We have implementation service, so we help them like get it off the ground, like, telling people how to use it, to like, do a little bit. I mean, we're first movers here, right? So there's a big chunk of us just educating the market. And like, to your guys' question, no, we're not hallucinating. Hey, you can just click on the link and verify it. Like, hey, AI is not taking your job, but people who use AI will, right? There's all this kind of like educating the market that we're doing on a sales side, but also during implementation. And interestingly enough, because it's so semantic and intuitive, and again, it's a text message, or similar to a text message, people don't need a training, which is fabulous. Like, I think construction tech where you don't need a training is the only construction tech that will actually be able to scale really fast. We saw this a little bit with PlanGrid, right? It was one of these examples that like was very intuitive, scaled really fast, got to like, $100 million in revenue really quickly. And we are following a lot of what Tracy did there, and even hired a bunch of their people, right, to just get to a point where make it easy to use. If people feel relieved the first time they use it, they will keep using it. If I have to go 2 weeks training on top of my 60, 70 hour work week where I write RFIs at 6 p.m. instead of playing with my 1-year-old at home, that will never fly. And that's what people miss.
I like it.
Yeah.
Nice. Now, roughly how many users do you guys have at the moment?
I have no idea. We're also not disclosing that.
Fair enough.
But we have like multiple national rollouts in the US. So we are currently mostly US focused, and we're in almost every state.
Do you
I don't
like
think we have Alaska yet, but
that might take a while. I suppose it's slightly different. I don't know much about the construction market there, but based on films that I've watched, it will probably be it sounds like
it's
be
cool
a challenge.
though. I've just recently been to Alaska, and it was like actually mind-blowingly beautiful. Very underrated.
Nice. Do you guys like is part of your strategy to do partnerships with like larger contractors, or like how do you view partnerships?
And do people see the benefits straight away, or do you need to like provide like free service and then they get convinced?
We're doing nothing for free. We're not a nonprofit. No, that's a very neat. I think like when you give away something for free, people don't even try to see value because it has no value. Like it's like the samples that you get in the grocery store. It's like it doesn't actually make the product more likely for me to buy the product, right? I just think it's valueless. So there's a lot of psychology behind this. So no, we absolutely do not do free pilots. We work with them. We have partnerships with, we Procore, Autodesk, Share Microsoft, and so on, like all of the tools we're integrating with. And then with large channel contractors, we do design partnerships sometimes if they're interested in doing that. But mostly it is, at this point, it's just a fully commercial product. And if people really want to help us figure out what's coming in 2 years, 3 years, then we do design partnerships.
And how do you perceive competition, and how do you stay competitive in the AI age?
Yeah. I mean, I feel there's like a new competitor coming up like once a month right now, like some of these, Y Combinator kids. It is interesting. So we were first movers, which is good. And historically in construction, the first mover advantage was actually, it's a huge forecast for success, not because, oh my God, we were so smart to figure it out first, but just because the industry has problems adopting new technology. And if they adopt something, they want to adopt the gold standard, right? They want to adopt the one thing that all their competitors are using because it's already pre-vetted. And so our go-to-market strategy was actually super aggressive. And I can tell everybody, like, I think it worked really well for us, but you need more capital upfront to do that. We had an enterprise first go-to-market. So we were not one of these startups that started with like a mid-sized SMB GC or something like that. We really started with the Suffolks and the Gilbanes and the Bechtels of this world, right? And we were like, when we had to go through major leaps of data security standards and SOC 2 type 2 compliance and all of this stuff, because obviously before you can sell to these large enterprises. But the idea was, if we get them to use it, we are enterprise ready. And then if you get a few of the big ones, the other big ones are looking at this, they want to do this as well. And then the mid-market will follow, because the mid-market always looks up, right? And then once you have the mid-market, then you also have the rest of the world, because the US is still, there's like good technology coming out of like Israel and Europe and so on, but the US is still something that like international companies are looking at, and it's like, what is coming out of there? And so that's why our go-to-market was enterprise first, and it has worked out so far. So how do we feel about competition? I think it will take people a lot of time and money to be able to get to enterprise deals, especially around generative AI. The bigger, like, I think I'm super competitive, so I watch everything all the time. So I have my tips on everything, but I'm slightly more worried, not even worried, I'm slightly more watching out what the big guys are doing, like the Autodesk and Procus and Microsoft of this world, and OpenAIs and whatever, because they have more capital and more brand recognition than us. There is nothing that a small startup has that we do not have. We have the best talent in the world. We have a lot of capital. We are hyper aggressive and have a great organization. So I think, like, is there somebody who has more than me, who can play different cards than I? And a startup definitely does not. And so the only people who can play different cards than I right now are incumbents. And there's a lot of cards that we have that they don't have, which is actually speed of innovation and actually getting products out in the market like multiple times faster than them, right? So that's what I see as competition. I'm looking up.
Yeah, nice. How many employees do you guys have?
We're 30 right now.
How do you hire the best?
We're in a hyper growth sprint, so we're 30. We should end the year at probably 50, 60, something like that.
How do you design for this?
Nice.
How do we hire the best? We have a super...
Yeah, you mentioned you had a great team. I'm curious.
Yeah, we're super intense like hiring process. Like, we just recently looked at like our engineering hires, and it's harder to get into trunk tools than to get into Harvard right now. So that's good stats out there, just from an amount of applicants and so on. Yeah, just a very intense interview process. We have the philosophy of hire slow, fire fast. Very American, I know, but it's really like 10 rounds of interviews at least, with like multiple different people, with scorecards, hyper quantitative, non-gendered, like, all the standards in the world pretty much, and work samples that are measured by systems and by AI and so on. And then once they've passed all of this, then we hire them, and then we set them up for success as well as possible.
Does the school have any impact on your hiring process, or there's some maybe attitude or some other skills that are paramount in the hiring process?
The school, you mean like business school or something
engineering
like that?
school, business school? Does the school or the institution?
Yeah.
Or if they were a carpenter, 12 years old.
Where they come
from
you
like
mean?
school background.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Yeah, I think absolutely. I think I learned a lot about actually like hiring, team building, company building at Stanford. I think Stanford Business School is known for that. And before I went, I was like, you can learn all of this stuff on YouTube. That's how I came in, right? I was like, is this really worth it besides the network? And then I was in, and I was like, I was so wrong. Like, there is a ton of actual tangible skills that you can learn in a program like that help our day to day, like, immensely. Culture building, like, org chart building, like board board composition, like how do you act with the board, like investor fundraising, like there's so many things that I was like, we would never be here if I wasn't at business school, and a bunch of our other executives as well. So we have people from really good schools as well. Even so, like, I'm not like a person like, oh, we only hire from Ivy League. Like, we have a lot of people from there, but some of the best people are from schools that I've never heard about. And it's not about which school you went to. It's about like how big's the chip on your shoulder.
Okay. So I just wanted to briefly go back to maybe go to market. So your favorite is enterprise first, you mentioned. And maybe can you tell something about like the ultimate product that you think you will create? Would that be serving the larger companies, this 4 billion skyscrapers type of projects, or would you like to penetrate through the whole market? And does it make sense to penetrate through all of it?
I don't know if it will ever make sense to penetrate through all of it. We're going down market right now, so we're doing a bunch of mid-market stuff as well. So I would say for companies that have like, I don't know, they do like 70, 80 million in revenue. I think that's the smallest companies we're dealing with right now a year. But I don't know if I will ever go down to the mom and pop shops in a way, because I just don't know if their problems, their level of bureaucracy is way smaller than the one we are dealing with, right? And so like also the level of data discrepancies in their stack of paper is way smaller on a $50,000 like home renovation than it is on a like $10 million project. And so I don't know. It's for sure not our first market. Our first market is like solving the problem of data discrepancies and unstructured data, and that's the bigger the construction set, the worse. What I'm more interested in from like additional markets right now is we're getting ready to expand to Europe. We have expanded to Canada. We're ready to expand to the Middle East. So it's more geographic markets right now that we're going after, especially because our tool works in at least every Romanian language. It also works in like Arabic and stuff like that. The more, I don't know how to call this, but the languages with like Mandarin and Japanese. And so that's something where we are not at a level of accuracy that we like. But Spanish, Portuguese, German, French, you name it, like that's all already built in. And so it's an easy way to expand it.
Any challenges when expanding across the pond to homeland?
It's very funny because every investor looks at me as like, when are you going into Europe, right? Because obviously I have like a really decent network from having lived there for a long time and worked in construction for 20 years. But GDPR is something that is an annoyance. And I'm not saying it's wrong. There's lots of arguments why GDPR is a good thing. For me, as somebody who has to, keep the lights on in a hyper growth business that is very focused on getting revenue in the door, GDPR is delaying a lot of things. It A, costs a lot of money to get it done, and then B, it's just making our deploying cycles and our innovation cycles from a software development perspective slower, which is just something I didn't want to do for a long time. I rather focus on perfect product market fit in one market to just like artificially blowing up my TAM.
Oh, perfect. I just wanted to actually ask about TAM. So how do you measure TAM, and what's your, how do you look at total addressable market when you think about product management and what you guys do? Sorry, document management, not product management.
We do. I mean, by now it's probably more project management than anything else. I like to tell investors, and actually we just did a fundraiser. So like I tell investors that like if they ask me about TAM, they're the wrong investors. And this is it's a very bold statement, but like it is construction. It's 10% of GDP. It's like $13 trillion a year.
But I want to know how much of this you can capture.
6.5.
Yeah,
I'm getting there. So 6.5% of every construction site is spent in rework because of data discrepancies. Okay, so take 6.5% of $13 trillion. Okay, so this is already like in the hundreds of billions of dollars right there, like close to like a trillion if I did the math correctly. I don't know. Yeah, if you say 10% is 1.3 trillion. Yes, we're close to $1 trillion that we just like wasting because of data discrepancies. Okay, let's just sit for a second. So there's $1 trillion up for grabs. If you then want to take it further, I'm also claiming that 70% of the white collar hours spent in construction can be automated. So there's probably another $1 trillion there. And again, I'm saying trillions with the T, so I don't think I need to talk about TAM. It's just like completely ridiculous.
I'm sorry for asking this question.
No, it's totally fine. I hear it all the time, and it was like, wait, construction, like, that's the beauty. I mean, look at something like Broker. It's like it's doing $1 billion in revenue with like a cloud storage with some workload on top. Look at PlanGrid, right? PlanGrid is awesome, $100 million revenue in 5 years, right? Like, it's like there is enough market to capture, and then PlanGrid was mostly in the US, right? There's so much market to capture if you have a tool that actually helps this industry. One last thing for you, which I love. Think about what's the most consumed product in the world. It's construction.
True.
The only thing we consume more than construction is air. And we have not yet found a way to productize or monetize that, right? So the thing we consume most, the product we consume most, it's actually a product, is construction. 99.9% of your life you consume construction.
I thought it was pornography, but hey.
I'll stop.
That's a personal question for you.
Because there will be a third one on towards you today.
Well, the web stats don't lie, people. Sarah, how about funding? You guys raised 10 million seed round, is that right?
Yeah, we raised a total
okay, sorry.
of yeah. When is this coming out? This podcast?
Like it'll be like 6 to 8 weeks or something.
Perfect. Then at this point we will have announced our Series A. So we just got preempted for a $20 million Series A. So we've raised a total of a little over $30 million.
Congratulations at that point.
Wow.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Especially, no, money's in the bank. It's all good. It's just not public announced yet, but yeah, so that was amazing because we weren't fundraising at all, and it was a real preempt, which I've always doubted. Like we were also preempted in our seed, but it was a seed round, so it didn't it wasn't that big of a deal. Yeah, I gave one of these podcasts with an investor, and afterwards they were like, "Can we have your Series A?" And I was like, "Go preempt!" And 3 days later with a term sheet, and 10 days later the money was in the bank.
Wow.
So it was less than 2 weeks turnaround from first conversation to money in the bank for a $20 million round, which is very unheard of. But it was great for us. We can now focus back on skill.
Yeah, good idea. How do you pick your investors?
They can't ask about total addressable market for sure.
Exactly. Yeah, there's a column in my Excel sheet where it's like you get an X. No, we're very strategic around that, as with everything. So we have a matrix of our executive team and where we are good and where we are not so good. And I'm trying to then match the investors' capabilities to the lacks that we have internally in a way. And so everybody besides our engineering team, everybody on our team has construction background, besides the people who actually code, right? But our product manager, our salespeople, our customer success, everybody is from construction. And so we do not need construction tech specific investors. Like, it just doesn't make sense for us. We don't need somebody who tells us how the industry works. Like, we got that. What we definitely do need is these investors who invest in hyperscale AI companies who actually know, how do you hire 20 engineers in 2 weeks, right? How do you structure some of these hyper growth problems that we have? And so we were looking for a generalist. We're looking for people who've done a lot of significant AI investments. And we found it. And so we're very excited about this. And we were obviously also looking for a big brand name just for hiring purposes, right?
Okay, interesting. Is there a danger that one of the investors may give you bad advice because they're not familiar with construction? I know you mentioned the team. You guys have got the knowledge, but
yeah, I mean, we got really to add on that, in both rounds, our lead investor and the person actually managing the deal has had some exposure to construction. In this round right now, the partner sits a managing partner that actually joins the board has a background in construction. So like her dad actually owned the second biggest subcontract in the country. And so she grew up working for his company. And that was just, and then she had a software career and was CEO over GitHub and so on. So like that was just a phenomenal match of somebody who came from construction, then had one of the biggest software careers ever and became a managing partner for one of the huge funds. So it's a unicorn right there. I'm not expecting that to happen again, but we found two of the unicorns. And I think it's not just that we found them. I think they also found us, right? Because these people understand that construction has a lot of potential and is a huge market, but they also understand that founder market fit is more important in construction than in any other industry.
I like it. Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's such a weird term, right? But like, I have never seen, if you look at all successful outcomes of construction tech startups, every single one of the founders had industry background. We're just a very weird bunch of people. To my earlier point, you're either in construction or you're not. And like nobody's kind of in construction.
That's interesting.
Nice.
Point. So now it actually makes sense when you mentioned the founding announcement in terms of the growth of the talent that you're thinking of from 30 to kind of 50 or something like that by the end of the year. So how do you plan for hiring from, like, what do you want to achieve with this money really?
Yeah. I mean, we have a huge financial model and very clear hiring plans that are drawn from, I think, from revenue, right? Like we need to come from this from a revenue perspective. Like ultimately we can't raise another round without like hitting certain revenue targets and multiple targets and everything. So the way we reverse engineer this, we're like, hey, by the end of next year, we need to be at X millions of revenue. And then we kind of like split this up in like core product, agent 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, like how much revenue do we think we can make of each of these? And then how many of these do we still need to build? And kind of from that backing out, like how much engineering talent do we need? How much sales talent do we need? So we reverse engineer headcount based on from revenue targets and kind of like also like roadmap targets in a way, right? But roadmap is obviously closely aligned with like vision and revenue again. And then we go to, I think currently we work with 10 different recruiting agencies that fueling us with the best talent because we have so hyper specialized talent needs, right? Like we need like a data extraction PhD who has dealt with like vision models on blueprints, right? And you're like, cool, there's 3 people in the world, right? Like, let's go after them. And so, yeah, tons of recruiting agencies, tons of internal work. We obviously have a huge ATS system that is dealing with all of that. I think we are dealing with recruiting almost the same way we're dealing with sales, where there's a CRM for recruiting and it's just a hyper-focused, targeted approach. And we poach a lot.
I actually don't know if we ask about profitability. You mentioned for a few times now that you're kind of thinking of revenue. So are you guys profitable or thinking about being profitable soon?
We are absolutely not profitable, but that is just a function of growth, right? So if we were to stop hyper growing from a product development perspective and from a like TAM and sales perspective, then we could totally be profitable. So if the funding market completely dries up in the next year or two, which doesn't look like it, but if that's the case, then yeah, we'll just like slow down our growth and turn profitable. But that's not what we're here for, right? Like, again, like we're not here to like just build a cute little company that gets bought. We're like really here to change how people experience their job in construction. I've been there. I've worked in the field for 15 years and it is such a rough job to do out there. You're under so much pressure. You have so much shit to do every single day that doesn't value add to anything or anybody. And that's really what we want to change. We want to help those people by taking away the bureaucratic pieces and just let them build. And so that's the bigger vision. And as long as we find people who help us finance our growth trajectories, like we're fine. And if that stops, then we'll do it through revenue.
Good.
Cool. I just wanted to change the tone slightly. Let's focus on Trunk. Maybe you can put them in, but just a more generalistic, broad landscape view of AI. So what do you think are what are like the latest sort of trends and changes? I know it's a very quick moving market, but like, yeah, what's happening in the world of AI, and what do you see the future? Perhaps it's going to be
Future the next 2 weeks.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. And that is so fascinating, actually. It's like when I mean, I did a ton of research in my life, and I would quote papers from like a year ago, right? Like in my PhD or something, I would quote something that was published a year ago, and people thought I was so cutting edge. When you think now, when you listen or read these papers that are coming out around LLMs, vision models, whatever, like anything generative AI, they're quoting stuff from 2 weeks ago. I'm like, I would die if I was a researcher right now. I have a friend who's in this PhD program in computer science, and I was like, I don't know how he does it. Like, this is impossible. Like, you cannot keep up whatever you publish until you even like done writing it. Somebody else is already further along. So it's the fastest moving technological market that I've seen. I've not been around for that long, but like, 20-ish years. So it is fascinating. What predictions are hard to make. These underlying models are getting insanely better every week, and new models are coming out every week. So I think overall, few predictions. Underlying models will get way, way, way cheaper, which is great for everybody. Yeah, so like this is a race to the bottom in foundational models, which I'm highly supportive. You have three buckets of generative AI, right? You have the foundational models, you have the infrastructure layer, and you have the application layer. Foundation models will get cheaper, race to the bottom, great. And they get better, right? Infrastructure layer is highly competitive, which is good for companies like us, right? Because the tech gets better and those are cheaper. And then there's the application layer space where companies like us play in, where it's really like we are relying on like, other models, other tools and so on, and we tweak them and make them work for a specific. And I actually think in this whole game, that's the most interesting part of generative AI, because that is the part that solves a real problem. Everything else is just supporting, and you can make a lot of money with that too. And that's important again for companies like us. We couldn't be doing what we're doing without like the infrastructure layer and the foundational models. But where it has actual impact on society and on the economy is really in the application layer. So I'm heavily bullish on that. Personal investments or everything I do is also like in that space, because I think everything else is a race to the bottom and is not really solving a direct need in a way. So that's a prediction there. I think otherwise, like, we'll see. I think we have to change our thinking a little bit, especially in enterprise AI and enterprise software, where most of the enterprise software out there right now is a cloud storage with some predefined workflows on top and then a cute little UI. That's the stuff that's the, especially in construction, that's Think Project, Procore, all of these like project management platforms, most of the apps out there, cloud workflow UI, right? What we're building and everybody else who's doing application layer AI is a cloud storage where you have your unstructured data turned into some structured data. And then you have these AI agents that are creating workflows on the fly. And that's the big shift, right? And then you have some semantic way to interact with those agents. But I think the beauty is that if an agent can write a workflow on the fly, it's way more agile. It's way more focused on actually solving a specific task than if you have a predefined workflow. And so that is the big shift that I think that is a hypothesis, right? That might not hold true, but that's how I strongly believe that most of this like old school software that is like cloud workflow UI will actually lose against cloud plus AI agents. So that's my big
very
prediction.
interesting and definitely beyond my comprehension actually at this point. But what you said I think I just need to re-listen a few times and then acquire it from the depth.
Okay, let me try to explain this. If you click a button on whatever, any software, behind the button, there's a line of code, right? That says like, if this button is clicked, then do action A, right? Then send an email, like the button, send an email, right? If you click the button there's a line of code is like, if button is clicked, send this email to address, right? What an AI agent can do is pretty much you tell him like, hey, send an email. And the AI agent just does it. So because the AI agent writes the line of code in real time. And so therefore it's way more flexible, because you can tell the AI agent, hey, actually like write the email, but send it to person A and then B and then C, which you would have to do manually in an email program because the workflow is not there. because the AI agent can write the workflow in real time. And we've already seen this with GPT-4 and, Gemini and other tools. But once we get to like 6 months from now, when GPT-5 and 6 or like the other options from Anthropic or whatever is coming out, then you actually, I think the GPU and the power behind it will be so strong that this will work in like microseconds. And from a European perspective, I don't know, there was just a really good model that came out of France that interrupts you while you speak. I don't know if you've seen this, like it's called Moji or something like that. From France, 8 people coded it, same investors as our Eric Schmidt invested $300 million and they coded it in like a year. And this AI model is so good that like you say something and it was like, I'm going down a rabbit hole, and instead of Martin interrupting me, the AI model comes in and is like, Sarah, it's not interesting, like let's move over there. So it processes, literally. I could do the podcast with this model right now. And it is so fast in the processing power, which is what I just described, right? It's writing code pretty much while it's listening to me and responding in more than real time. So the latency is getting so short, which is why I think traditional software is done.
I think it's absolutely super interesting. So I wouldn't even think of that. But what you said, I just want to go back to something you said. I know that we are a little bit of time after the time now, but last one question for me. You said there's foundation layer, infrastructure layer, and application layer. So you guys are innovating on the application layer, right? So are there companies in construction tech that have solutions on the infrastructure layer? Or this is the wrong question to ask?
No, it's not the wrong question to ask. I think there's tools that play in the infrastructure layer, but not necessarily the infrastructure AI layer. So we, for example, work with a tool called Agave, which is an API connector that's like an infrastructure space, like it doesn't have a front end and stuff like that. But they're not in the AI space at all. So what I'm talking about with infrastructure AI layer is more these tools that monitor your model quality, that monitor your latency, that like a pinecone to like actually save your vector storage. Like there's so many of these tools that support companies like us. There is nothing that I know that was specifically built for construction.
Also very interesting.
But I might have missed something. Yeah. Again, Agave is something we use as an API connector. I know that like Toric, for example, is something that played a little bit in the infrastructure layer in AI construction. But yeah, that's kind of it.
Yeah. Okay. Last question, bit of off topic. If you were not building trunk tools, what would you be doing?
Carpentry.
Where would life have taken you?
Depends on if I still need to make money or not.
Of course.
My trunk tools is called trunk tools because I love elephants. Like I absolutely love elephants. So it's not the trunk of the car that's we say publicly, but like it's actually our symbol is an elephant. And I would be saving the elephants. So that's the whole plan. If like as soon as I'm financially like stable, which whatever that means, but then I would probably want to save the elephants.
Nice. Okay, Sarah, cool. Can you tell us, an audience, where they can find out more about you and Trunk Tools?
Yeah, if you want to contact me directly, LinkedIn is probably the easiest way, even though it gets messy. But if you just want to find out about Trunk Tools, trunktools.com, trunktools.com/careers if you want to work with us, or it's just trunktools.com if you want to sign up for a demo or the product. Yeah, it's really cool. I'm very excited about what's coming. It's really magic what's already there. It looks like magic, even though it's just AI, but it's just really a beautiful, there's a vision that just like fascinates me where we can actually focus on building and not having to deal with everything else. And I think this could really help the industry. It could elevate everybody in it. It could make us safer, less stressed, and ultimately more successful.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you, Sarah.
Cool. Thanks for having me, guys.